Avowed is good, but it's not great, and I really wanted it to be. Hi guys, my name is Zach, and this is going to be my short review for Avowed. Now, just as a preference, I have only scratched the surface of this game of what I really feel like. I've only played about a week of it. Whatever it may be, I have a baby, I have a family to attend to, I have work, I have a ton of other things that have held me back from being able to put as many hours as I've wanted to into Avow, but I am still excited to kind of dive back into it and give as much as I can over the next couple of weeks. But I still wanted to get my thoughts out there because there is a lot of people talking about it. So again, this is like my early impressions of the game. Even with still playing just a week of it, there's a lot, and I feel like, again, that I barely scratched the surface. But I feel like I've done enough to where I have my impressions of the game. And I think it's good, but it's not great, and I really wanted it to be because Obsidian, for me, is like one of the greatest RPG studios. Now, I know a lot of the bigger heads still aren't there anymore, and maybe that's a big piece of it, but I don't know if I was just expecting like Fallout New Vegas levels type storytelling, or specifically with what they do with the Outer Worlds, which I thought was like such a surprise of a game. When I downloaded that, I didn't expect to get the game that I got, and it was great. And Avowed for me might be like their best gameplay to date. Like, this very much feels like a mix of Skyrim meets more modern technology, but in the same sense of like kind of like BioShock, sometimes it reminded me of. But what I love about this game is the combat, and that is one of the things I think you're going to hear a lot of people talk about. And that is the one thing that has kept me coming back to the game every day after work. Every single moment I get a chance to play the game, it is because of that combat. So Avowed, if you don't know what it's about, well, it's a brand new RPG fantasy game. Again, think Skyrim, Elder Scrolls, all this stuff, but developed by a different studio, a little bit more of a modern take. I would like to throw in a little bit of Dishonored's also in there, but Avowed takes place in the Living Lands, a diverse region within the world of Eoria. The Living Lands features a range of environments from lush forests and deserts to sprawling caves and valleys. Players assume the role of an envoy from the Empire, tasked with investigating a mysterious plague known as the Dream Scourge. Now, in this game, you play as like a godlike, so you have like all these like flowers and like mushrooms on your face. You can take it off. The character I made looked pretty damn cool with it, so I left it. But this takes place in a series of Pillars of Eternia, which I've never touched into any of those, and I feel like what this game does is it really much just throws you into the damn world and never, like for a second, takes you back. And I think that's my one thing, is I don't mind being thrown into a world, but I really want to get to know the world, kind of get settled into it, and I never felt that any of the exposition was like huge. And even earlier in the game, once you actually get to the story and something happens to your main character, once you wake up from that event, I always found myself waiting to get hooked back into the story. And I personally never did. I found the story for Avowed to be pretty weak and honestly just okay. From Obsidian and what they've done in the past, I was really hoping that a game of this level, of this magnitude, was going to be able to tell me a story that very much impressed me and got me really on board with everything. Because as much as I love like a lot of Bethesda's games, like whether it's Fallout or Elder Scrolls like Oblivion and Skyrim, I love going back to those games. I was really hoping Avowed was going to be that next one that's going to make me, I can go through the story, do a bunch of side quests, and have fun with that action and just always have fun and do something to explore. Avowed felt a little bit more smaller in scale, and in terms of its story, again, it just never hooked me. Not to say that those other ones did, but my expectations were a little bit higher for Avowed in terms of grabbing me that. And even with the companions as well. I think most of the companions here are kind of just fine. Kai, for me, is the best one, the very first one that you meet. Now, I think a lot of people have been kind of talking about it, that it's voiced by the same guy who does Garrus from Mass Effect, so there may be a lot of biasness in there because Garrus is one of the best companions in Mass Effect. Talking about Avowed, so I'll stay on there. That for me is the one entitlement that I really loved, and I wish they again would have done a little bit better with the other companions too. It's just, again, the story doesn't really impress me, but what has taken me back and brings me back to Avowed is the exploration and the combat. I think the combat is freaking great. I think for a first person, or if you want to play in third person, the combat is smooth. It works. I like how you are not tied to like one build. You can swap up your build at the change of a hand. You can literally click Y and change out a loadout. So like I was running around with a magic and a sword in one hand, and then I would flip around and have like a gun. And again, it gave me back those BioShock vibes where you'd walk around with like the plasma in one hand and like your gun in the other, or a wrench in the other one. And for me to have that feeling again, it just puts the power in you and the environment, the way you can do it. So if you have electricity, you can shock water and, shock the creatures. Like, the environment is a big key piece of your fighting abilities too. And for me, I thought that was actually one of the biggest strengths of the game, was always trying to figure out what positions or what movements I could do to change it out. And again, everything feels overall smooth. That is the thing that I loved. And I think for me, this kind of puts the ball in Bethesda's ballpark. What are you going to do with your next Elder Scrolls game? Are you going to be able to kind of double down on some of that stuff? Because Starfield was cool, but the action, could have been a little bit better. Action in Avowed is definitely one thing that heavily impressed me, and I was very much satisfied with the need and the usage of how that works. I mentioned the exploring is a big key piece to this. I found myself doing a lot more side quests so I could have more of a reason to go out further into the maps or these little areas and kind of see everything that I had to see. And for the most part, the graphics are stunning. I think the frame rate for the most part also works on the Xbox Series X. I played on performance mode and I thought it was beautiful and actually looked pretty good too, but ran really well. I never had too many frame drops. That's just me personally. Maybe you experienced something different. I appreciated that and had fun with it. But alongside this, again, as I've said, it has just been a blast to explore in the combat, and I think those are the two things that I came away impressed with Avowed. I talked about the story being kind of a hit or a miss for me, but the one thing I do think that I do want to mention, and I didn't know about this till I was actually doing a little bit of research before reviewing it, and that's the fact that this was originally supposed to be like a big multiplayer game, and I didn't know that going into this, which now makes a lot of sense of certain things. There's a gear system that I think sometimes like hinders like your ability to progress a little bit further in terms of fighting enemies. And I didn't really care for the gear system too much. I thought that kind of hindered, again, that exploration part. And I think that would have been a nice thing to kind of get rid of. I hate that so many games like rely on that. It's not terribly bad to like get through, but every game just relies on it too much. Like purple, green, blue, whatever the item is. Come on now. Let me base off my stats and how badass I am on a level. But that was a big key piece to this, and I think that was something that was still from the multiplayer. I think that's also why some of the story lacks too, and just some of the towns you go into. There is definitely just this feeling that there's something missing from the essence of Avowed, and I think that thing that's missing is the multiplayer aspect that they were trying to set up in here. And I think, again, there's just little few things in between that hold Avowed back from being incredible. I think this could have been a great game. I think this could have been an amazing game. I think it's the start of something that's going to be cool. I really hope it does find its fan base so we can possibly get a second one. And then if that second one can double down on the story and all the essences of what made the first Avowed good, and double down and make those better, I think we'll have a better game here. But with all that said, I'm going to give Avowed a 7 out of 10. Thanks again, guys, for watching. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe button, comment down below your guys' thoughts, and of course, until next time, stay classy.